Hello, friends! Welcome to a new lesson of our Flutter course. In the previous lesson, we covered the basics of HTTP requests, and today we will start working with them in a real Flutter app. We will learn how to send requests to a server, retrieve data, and organize everything in your app. First, we need a simple server to practice on. Fortunately, we don't need to write the server ourselves, as we can use a service like Mock API. It's an online service that allows you to create a fake server for testing HTTP requests. Why is this convenient? Because we don't have to wait until the server for the real project is ready. We just create its model in Mock API and work with it. This is very useful for learning and testing. To get started, you need to go to the website, and I'll leave a link in the description. Then, create an account. After that, you need to create a project and give it any name. Once created, go to the project and create a new resource. This will be the data model we'll work with, for example, users. Let's configure the fields besides the ID. Let's say the user has a name, email, and age. Note that the name and email are of type string, while age is of type number. Now we can start using it in the app. Let's move to Android Studio. First, let's create a class for our model. I suggest doing this in a new file. It will have the same fields that we configured on the website. Next, we need to implement the from.json and to.json methods. We've already done this in the previous two lessons, so we won't spend too much time on it. However, it's important to make sure the keys match those we set up. Now, we need to create a class that will handle networking tasks. In the last lesson, we did this directly, all in one method, but that's not the best approach architecturally. Let's create it in a new file and call it users repository. First, let's write a method that returns a list of all users. For this, it should return a list of users. No parameters are needed. To make network requests, we need to import the HTTP package into the project. We've already done this in the previous lesson, so now we just need to import it into this file. Now, let's execute the request itself. To do this, we'll create a variable that will store the response from the request, and we'll use the get method to make the request. As we remember, this method takes a URI object. We can create it using the static parse method, where we'll pass the URL from the Mock API website. Note that we need to append the name of our resource to the end of the URL. Notice that the compiler highlights an error because we are trying to assign an object of type future to a variable of type response. As we remember, to fix this, we need to use the await keyword. With this keyword, the program will wait for the future and eventually get its result. However, we see another error, which this time is related to using await in a function that is not declared with async. The compiler suggests we add async, and now the return type of our method has changed to future. This is because when a method is declared with async, it means it is asynchronous and may take an undefined amount of time to complete. Therefore, such a function must always return a future. But the generic type for future remains our desired type. Now, let's return the result. But first, we need to check if the request was successful. We will check the status code, and if it's not 200, we'll return an empty list. In other cases, we'll convert the response body into a list and then use map to convert that list into a list of user objects. We'll use the from.json factory constructor for this. Don't forget about toList. Next, let's write a method that will create a user. This time, the return type will be void since we won't return anything. However, we will still use future because the method might take a long time to execute. It will accept a user object as a parameter. This method should also be declared as async. Inside the method, we don't necessarily need to create a variable for the response, as it's not needed. We'll just send the data to the server, and we're not interested in the response. Of course, ideally, we should check the response status code and display some error information to the user if something goes wrong, but we will learn this in future videos. For now, we will simply call the post method from the HTTP package. This time we use post instead of get, because our goal is to send data to the server, not receive it. Don't forget to use await so that the program waits for the method to complete. Now let's deal with the parameters. The main parameter is the same as in get, which is the URI. Notice that the URLs for the requests are the same, only the request method differs. The next parameter we need is body, which is the request body, the information we send to the server. We need to pass the user's JSON as a string. We did this in the previous lesson. To do this, we'll create a variable to store it, and call the toJSON method on our user. We need to call the JSON encode method to convert the JSON map into a string. We will pass this variable as the body parameter. So today we created a project in Mock API and created a simple resource for storing users. We created a class for handling network requests and implemented 2 methods in it. We also created a class for our model and added the necessary methods. To keep the lesson from getting too long, it will be divided into several parts. In the following parts, we'll connect these methods to the interface. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next lesson.